Let's stay with the Marshalltown fire story. Over 70 people, as you're hearing there, including children, have died and dozens more have been injured when a 5-story building caught ablaze. Gauteng Cooperative Governance MEC Khumalo joins us now for more on this. MEC, good to have you, and thank you very much for your time. At what point do we say we are catching a wake-up call on something that we should have caught a wake-up call on a number of years ago? Is it only because we are in this tragedy now that we begin to take this seriously?
Well, I think your latter statement says it all, because obviously we are reacting to a situation, because if you look at what is before us in terms of the laws and regulation, we should have waked up a long time ago, because the bylaws of municipalities, if they were implemented or enforced, would have avoided it, including the role that we are playing as a provincial government, because we are playing an optimal role in the delivery of fire services, for instance, by municipalities, enhancing the bylaws of municipalities. Amongst others, who are directed by prescripts such as the white paper on local government that seeks to guide us, that amongst the things that we should be doing is to ensure that we establish oversight mechanisms on the provision of fire services, that we create adequate linkages between intergovernmental structures of the 3 spheres of government, that we must ensure greater coordination and therefore create awareness. So if we've done all of those things working together with the local government, I'm sure we shouldn't be here. So going forward, we should stick to what the law tells us to do, and I'm sure we'll be able to mitigate against some of these incidents.
So, MEC, are you saying to us, in a sense, you failed, as CoGTA yourself, maybe other players as well, to fulfill, for example, Section 154 of the Constitution, which says to you as province, you need to use every legislative and other measures to support and strengthen the capacity of local government. When you saw that the city is failing to deal with hijacked buildings in the inner city, what did you do as CoGTA to support them?
Well, the unfortunate thing is that everything else has to happen within cooperative governance. And cooperative governance suggests that we cannot go to a particular municipality or jurisdiction area of that municipality and impose yourself. You've got to work within the understanding that local government is a sphere on its own. What we can do in essence is to continue to engage local government. So when local government, for instance, brings IDPs to us, part of the IDPs has to deal with regulations. We are able to comment and say, from where we are, we think you, for instance, you are not implementing your bylaws adequately. We think that there are challenges insofar as enabling us as a province to implement certain of regulations that we need to. So it's a question of persuading them. I must say that the city of Johannesburg tried, or is continuously trying to deal with this problem of hijacking. It's not like they are sitting there doing nothing. For instance, amongst the things that they did was to establish a unit, which unit is dedicated to deal with hijacking of buildings. We know that at some point there was almost a breakthrough, if you want to say that. But when matters were taken to court, those people were released and all of those kind of things. So in a sense, whilst we take responsibility that there are certain things that if we could have done them optimally, we could have avoided the situation we're in, that we take a responsibility as such. And we don't want to engage ourselves in any blame game, but rather we want to engage ourselves on what is before us and how best we can do it, having learned our lessons out of this incident.
So I want to understand, you're saying when the Constitution says support and strengthen, for example, the city to manage its own affairs, you're saying the best that you could possibly do is say, let's see your IDPs, and we could just merely suggest that maybe you're not doing well. That's all that is expected of you to do as far as the Constitution is concerned, in ensuring that they are handling their affairs properly. Because if we look at hijacked buildings in 2016, reported by then Mayor Herman Mashaba to be sitting at 600, you're hearing today that those hijacked buildings now would have grown to as many as 1,000. That to me doesn't say you are dealing with the situation. In fact, it says the situation is getting worse.
No, but if you look at that section in broad terms, it is not specific to the issue that we're discussing because if I have to answer it in its context, we've got powers. For instance, if a municipality is not performing its functions that are provided for in the Constitution and other prescripts that guide and regulate municipality, I've got a right to effect 139 and dissolve that municipality, bring in the administrator and ensure that work gets done. But I need to do that on the basis of the fact that the municipality is doing little or nothing with regard to that intervention. So I'm saying in the city of Johannesburg, amongst the things that they've done, for instance, is to create a unit, which unit is dedicated to ensure that they deal with the whole question of hijacking of cities. But we've got to agree that, Thabo, that the hijacking of city is quite a complex issue in a sense, and it's not only a South African phenomenon as such, but there's also criminality that is involved. There are quite a number of issues that involved. As I say, at some point there was some kind of a breakthrough, but because of those people appeared in court, they were not convicted, and so on and so on. At some point, you've got these NGOs that defend people's rights, and all of who will come in. And there's also a law that I'm happy that the president said Parliament will also have to look at that particular law, which deals with, regulates the eviction of people, because it sometimes, not sometimes, it in many cases make it difficult for a municipality just to get into a building and just evict people like that. It requires you to do certain things, which things will take time to ensure that an intervention is made as such. So we've got to holistically look at everything else and review those regulations and laws that makes it difficult for the municipality to intervene. As I said, the illegal occupation should be treated for what it is.
Yeah.
Illegal occupation.
I fully understand that, and I agree with you, but these are complex issues. They're not easy issues. And that's why they need to be dealt with, because they bring a lot of complexity that end up in us losing so many lives. And I'm trying to understand what, for example, could have been the issue with this particular building in handling it accordingly, right? My understanding that it was leased by the city to the Department of Social Development in Gauteng. So it is a building within the government sphere. One of the obligations would be it needs to be checked on a regular basis. If it's your stock, if it's your investment as government, you need to check it on a regular basis. You need to maintain it on a regular basis. It seems to me you threw in the towel and said, well, the building is hijacked, they'll see to finish. And nothing was ever done about it.
The big question is, should we as government invest on a building that has been hijacked? Because if we're doing that, we will be enhancing or will be accomplice to the illegal activity that is taking place there. So the first thing that you've got to do is to ensure that you deal with the illegalities that are taking place in that particular building.
But how do you sit with your asset register and know that this is an asset that belongs to you and you are not in control of it for all these years? It's an asset that belongs to you and you see it in your asset register and you don't account for it in any way?
But the point that I concede in is that we tolerate quite a lot of lawlessness in our country. We've allowed the law and order to fade, and that to a certain extent criminals to control certain situations. I concede to that because, as I said, illegal occupation should be treated for what it is. We shouldn't have allowed what we have in front of us to persist and therefore appear as if we want to use it as an excuse as such. That should not have been the point, and that's not the point that I'm emphasizing. I think the president has said it all. He said, wake up call, learn our lessons, and I'm saying, as part of us learning our lessons, we should ensure that as the starting point, the bylaws of municipalities are being enforced. The role and responsibilities of the province within the spirit of cooperative government is also being enforced, and that national government must also play its role in terms of the national regulation or acts that impact on the work that the two spheres of government should be doing in dealing with such matters in front of us.
Yeah, and what does that look like? Maybe let's start here. In terms of the legislation, as the president is saying, there are a lot of legal impediments that would, I suppose, get in the way of you expediting the work that you need to do in terms of addressing the question of shortage of accommodation in the city. It's not as if we are talking about, it's an organization that is not in power that is talking. It's not as if it's an organization that is not making laws that is talking. Why have those bottlenecks not been unplugged all these years?
Thabo, we should accept that at the beginning of this government in 1994, we were largely informed by what happened during the apartheid era. And therefore, we developed the laws that would make it difficult for whoever that is in power to repeat such things. For instance, on eviction, we've put a law that makes it difficult for any other person to be evicted in the building. For instance, part of what the law requires us to do is that before you can evict any person, you've got to find an alternative place for that particular person. In other words, emphasizing more of human rights culture rather than emphasizing more on regulating law and order as it is. So over a period of time since democracy, we've learned quite a lot of things, and we've seen the evolution of the implementation of our laws enabling criminality to prevail as such. And on the basis of those, we've got to go back and say, let's amend some of our laws to enable us to deal with the reality in front of us, and that is to ensure that we're not allowing criminality to prevail. Because if you look at these buildings, as me and you are saying this evening, we are referring to them as hijacked buildings. It means something wrong, something illegal has taken place in that particular building. But given the circumstances, because now people are using the ordinary, the vulnerable people to hide, they're hiding behind vulnerable people to advance their criminal activities.
Stay with us a little bit, MEC, because I want you to expand a little bit on that and what the proposals are in as far as being able to facilitate that kind of work that you want to do in the inner city buildings. What are your thoughts? You can weigh in tonight, 072-110-5584. Otherwise, you can send us a message on X at Newzroom 405. Cooperative Governance MEC Khumalo with us. Stay with us. It's the Cooperative Governance MEC in the Gauteng province, Khumalo. I'm not by any means suggesting that we should be breaking human rights laws, but within the limitations of human rights laws, what is permitted? What are you suggesting should be put in place? Because I believe there are some proposals that province, for example, has even made to the president on this particular matter.
No, I think the first thing is that we should implement the basics. What are the basics? The basic is that there are laws that exist in our country. For instance, nobody is allowed to hijack any building or to take any building illegally, occupying any building illegal. That's the first thing. The second thing is that we know that some of those people who are doing that are having criminal intent, and therefore using vulnerable people who are looking for place to occupy in a real sense. And what is worse is that those vulnerable people would be paying rent to those people and so on. The second part of it is that so we've got to deal with that from what the law says. And the law, from the perspective of the law, nobody should be allowed. When people hijack building, as government, we've got the power to intervene, arrest those people, take them to necessary court and secure conviction against them. The second part of it is that we've got to ensure that the bylaws are implemented, the municipal bylaws. The municipal bylaws said any building that must be occupied by any person must be suitable for such occupation. Now, if you look at that building, clearly speaking, that building was never suitable for any occupation. In fact, you find that there was even shacks that were built within that particular. It was not suitable. That is why people could not have escape route. That's why they have to jump. Some of them have to jump through the windows and so on. So it was not suitable for that. Linked to that is the responsibility that we are carrying. Our mandate, for instance, is to monitor, support, and manage fire disasters within the province, within the fire brigade legislation that allows us to can do that. So some of the things that we should be doing is that we should be going to those particular buildings and ensure that those buildings are aligned to what the law expects them to be. That's the basics that we should do. In terms of the bigger issues, we've got to make submission to the provincial and national government to amend the PI, as they call it, the act that regulates eviction, to enable us to deal with the situation at hand. For instance, people were saying even there tonight that some of them were like, we're not going to leave that building. We are going to sleep there because we've got our belongings and all of those things. If you talk strictly human rights cultures, you've got to listen to them. You've got to respect what they are saying and so on. But we've got to put a provision that allows us to say, no, you can't do that. Yeah. And I like what the city of Johannesburg is saying, and we are supporting them. We are saying,
so are you saying that right is absolute in nature? Because, well, yes, there are certain human rights that are absolute in nature, but not all rights are absolute, especially if they would then infringe on somebody else's right.
Of course, all the rights are limited by Section 36. They are not absolute as such. So I'm not suggesting in any way that right is absolute, but I'm saying, given the practice that is there and the fact that people would have a right to protest and all of those kind of things, and the fact that we've got to listen to them, we've got to be consultative in our approach, and so on, all of those put together. And there was an example that even the city of Johannesburg raised, that at a point when the former mayor there, Herman Mashaba, wanted to deal with this kind of, there was an NGO that took him to court, and he was found wanting by the court and all of this. So if you take the totality of things, you will see that we've got to review some of the prescripts and subordinate and legislation that really help, that are intended to help us to regulate or to deal with the situation like this.
Let's talk then about what you also raised around the intergovernmental cooperation and what it means. So I'm hearing something, for example, to the effect that says human settlement has been delegated, has been a delegated responsibility to the city by province, right? And in conversation with, for example, MMCs for human settlement, they'll tell you that even if they were to be given a budget in a year, they might at most be able to deliver 20,000 units. When the backlog that you're dealing with is over 1 million people that are on that RDP house register that needs to be catered for. Is this not a cop-out as far as the province is concerned to just say, well, we've delegated the responsibility of human settlement to the city when they know that the task at hand is such a mammoth task that the city would not be able to carry it by itself?
Not long ago in the EXCO or cabinet of the province, as it is, MEC Maile gave a report, and in one of the report that he spoke to, indicated that at the beginning, when all the municipalities wanted the province to enable them to be delegated the power to build houses, they would have indicated the capacity they have. They would have indicated the fact that that kind of a delegation would assist in ensuring that there's acceleration of building of houses as such within their municipalities. But then they were enabled, delegated to can do that. Then the reality struck that over a period of time, the observation is many of these municipalities are not living up to the expectation. And therefore, what is the key thing there? The key thing is that we've got to now look at what is the consequences that the province can effect or in that particular regard. And the province is busy looking at that. One of the things that you can do, you might review, take back the delegation because it's not helping you to implement or to accelerate the implementation of houses. In fact, one of the, I would call it the criminal thing that it does is that we return a lot of money that was intended to build houses due to the fact that many of those local municipalities have not been able to implement it. So as part of this renewal process that I think we should engage ourselves in, that must also be part of the subject, the issue of the delegation that goes to municipality and the capacity of municipalities to be able to implement as per the contract that they would have entered with the provincial government as such. Yeah. Clearly, as it is now, it is a big problem, I must say.
What is the current tally on transitional housing that you have? Because part of what you now need to deal with are these buildings which are inhabitable. People should not be living there. They are not properly electrified. They are not properly taken care of in terms of sanitation. And so even others, they say it's a dump there. They actually throw their refuse right there in that building. So it's rat infested and so on and so forth. So there needs to be a way in which those people are removed and taken into transitional housing so that those buildings, they are rehabilitated if that needs to be.
We've not long ago, under the leadership of Premier Panyaza Lesufi, because part of our responsibility as CoGTA is what we call urban renewal or urbanization of the cities. We've been tasked to put together an urban strategy on how we're going to deal with urbanization within the cities. The reason for that task to be given to us is because when you look at many of our cities, particularly the CBDs, our CBDs are dilapidating, which include the building that you are making reference to. So our work is to ensure that we revive the cities. Our work is to ensure that we bring the cities up to the standard that they're supposed to be. Included in that is to ensure that all the buildings that are there in our data dilapidated, we either decide that they must go or we decide that they can be maintained and revived as such. So we are working on that particular strategy, and that strategy to mean that it's going to affect all the CBDs of bigger municipalities and smaller municipalities within the province as such. But linked to that will be exactly that. Then human settlement will have to come up with a plan of how do they help transit those people from where they are to the houses that to places where they can occupy whilst we are dealing with this whole question of reviving our CBD as such. So there's a bigger plan that we are putting together, and within the spirit of cooperative government, we will then be engaging with municipalities in ensuring that that particular plan is being implemented. And that task, we started it 3 months ago, and we put in fact, the Premier said, I want to be, as a Premier, part of chairing that subcommittee, which is headed by myself, that is going to ensure that there's acceleration of reviving of CBD and urbanization of our cities as such.
Dung, I appreciate your time. Thanks for your indulgence this evening and for your intervention. Cooperative Governance MEC in the Gauteng province, the MEC Khumalo.